So a quick bit of audience participation. Via show of hands, I'd like to know how many of you have an idea for a product that you'd like to turn into a business, or one that you're doing right now, or you've recently started a business. Who? Yeah. Pretty good crowd. Yeah. So most of us, right? Okay. Well, so that's very interesting. So quick bit of background about me. So my name is Ariel, as Chris said, like the mermaid. I'll make the joke for you. I'm an EE, as you can probably hear from my smooth accent. I started in Australia. I actually started my startup, Cartesian Co., that was the PCB printer company, in Australia. And then my co-founders and I moved it to New York, where it rapidly failed. And then after that, I was like, well, I'm just going to move to the Bay. So I moved here. And then since then, I have joined a couple of startups here, but the one that I'm working at right now is called Zipline. And I'll talk a little bit more about Zipline later, but briefly, it's a drone company delivering emergency blood and medical supplies to rural parts of Africa. And what sets that company apart is that we've actually done it. So that's pretty fun. Okay, so the scope of my talk today is that this is a crash course into the business side of running a hardware company. Now, definitely some people here, I have a feeling maybe over here, might actually have more of a business training than I do, which is none. But what I did do was try to run a hardware business and fail. So I can teach you a lot of stuff from that. This talk is going to be very light on numbers because I am not the right person to give you those numbers. There are plenty of places you can look for those online. And this is a hurt feelings warning. So I'm going to say some things that I have a feeling is going to piss some of us in the audience off. And with that in mind, hardware is not the hard part. It is actually the easiest part of your business. And let me kind of clarify what I'm saying there. If hardware is the hardest part of your business, your hardware is too hard. It will not make for a successful business. It needs to be easy enough that you can produce hardware and actually be able to sell it. You need to be able to focus on actually selling the product, because at the end of the day, that's the point of the business. Anything else is an exercise in engineering masturbation. So it's important that we just accept that now and move on, okay? So let's look at some examples of really simple hardware that makes for really excellent businesses. So number one, first thing that jumps to mind is Tile. So an excellent example of a successful IoT company, but so they raised $18 million in June with $34 million total. That's crazy. I was impressed that they raised. No one here works at Tile? Okay. I was impressed that they raised $18 million because the market was really cooling off and they had a whole bunch of competitors springing up around that same time that were undercutting them and getting a lot of the market space. But I mean, look at the complexity of their product right there. If you aren't familiar, Tile is a tracking piece of hardware. Like you put it on a keychain and then you can use Bluetooth Low Energy and an app on your phone to I think it makes a noise. You can make it ring, but then also you can put one of your devices in lost mode. So say you lost your cat and this was attached to the cat. Then all of the other devices, all of the other phones that are running the app will silently be searching for your cat. And when the cat is found, that user does not get an alert, so they can't steal your cat. It just goes back over the internet to your phone and says, your cat was last seen in the vicinity of this GPS location. So really an excellent product, but so simple. What is that? Like a microcontroller, some Bluetooth Low Energy, some battery management, and a coin cell battery. It's pretty, in the grand scheme of things, that's pretty low complexity. What they do have, as I mentioned, is a great app. Now, another example is Particle. Another excellent IoT company raised $10.4 million just last month. Yeah, go Particle. Yeah. So $16 million total. Again, a fairly low complexity product. Again, it's not just like a breadboard with a bunch of wires, but it is fairly low complexity. And what they sell is not this product, it's an amazing software ecosystem. So for those of us that have used the Particle software ecosystem, it's incredibly simple to use and so refreshing. And that's what's so good about their company, and that's what's so good about Tile, is that they have both correctly realized that the best hardware company is one that is not about the hardware. The best hardware company is one where the piece of hardware enables software or an app or a service that goes along with it that you can scale and make a lot of money out of. In fact, you might as well, as I'm sure that, which way's back? I'm sure that Tile probably like makes almost no profit on their actual tiles itself. So as a counter example to this, and to plug my own company a little bit, Zipline, so the company that I work for. So Zipline is tackling one of the great unsolved problems of our age, drone delivery. But thank you. But it is actually a pretty complicated problem. But in terms of like the hardware itself as well, because you've got the air systems, you've got avionics, you're trying to take general aviation, because everything has to be incredibly safe, right? You're trying to take general aviation practices, make those tiny and incredibly cheap, and then you've got to be able to replicate all that stuff on the ground as well, and it's a big thing. So still, even in a very high complexity hardware business, engineers only make up about 30 to 40% of the total employees. And even then, a lot of us work on operations, not specifically on hardware itself. So I kind of would like to ask you, those of you that are founding companies right now or thinking about founding companies, are all of your team members engineers? All of my team members were engineers, and that was definitely a big part of the problem. So we had 7 people and we had 7 engineers. So that was just a recipe for disaster. Okay. So when you go to start your company, the number one thing you have to get straight in your head is, what is your market? I know that sounds simple to do, but it's actually a very difficult exercise if you try to do it properly. Are you a B2B, business to business? Are you a B2C, business to customer? B2B2C, or many of the other variants that exist out there. You need to know exactly what niche it is that you fit into. This is really broad strokes too. And one thing that unfortunately I removed the slide right before now because I couldn't get a good photo for it, but here's a little thought experiment that you can all do at home. You go on to AngelList. I applied for like AngelList job alerts years ago. And I looked for my search term was hardware I think just in the US or maybe in the Bay. And even after I got a job, I was still looking at them because in the email, AngelList gives you 140 characters or something to explain the point of your business. You get a logo, you get the name, and you get the mission statement of your business. And so many of them end in ... and then you have to click through to see what it is. If you can't fit the point of your company into whatever that 140 character limit is, it's not well enough to find. You have not distilled the essence of what your company does down enough to be successful. Now, remember what I said at the beginning, I'm going to piss some people off. That's just not going to work. I can guarantee you right now, I've seen so many companies fail because their idea for what the product was, and this is another interesting point, the product is not the business. Don't get those two confused. The business makes the product. Your business probably does something other than just make the product as well. If you can't get it down to that tiny character limit, then the idea is too fluid for you to successfully execute on it and make it into a good company. Now, we're approaching a very interesting inflection point. So, this is the time where you have to make a big decision in your life. Are you going to take this idea and turn it into a lifestyle business, or are you going to turn it into a hardcore startup? Now, the difference is a lifestyle business is one where you sell on Etsy, Tindy, eBay, maybe Amazon, and you produce it in batch quantities a little bit yourself, and you don't have any staff, or maybe you've got one person that does fulfillment somewhere or something. But it's a little thing that you do on the side. It probably will supplement your income or give you enough income, but it won't IPO. It won't get acquired. It won't have a $100 million valuation or a $1 billion valuation or anything like that. The other end of the spectrum is a hardcore startup. And you have to, a big point of what I'm trying to get across here is hopefully what I'm talking about will help you make an informed decision. Because when I started Cartesian Co., I was very much on the fence about whether or not I wanted it to be a lifestyle business or a hardcore startup. And I didn't know what those two things entailed. So it took me a long time to make a decision, and I don't know if it was the right decision, but here we are now. And I don't want other people to make, it was very difficult, it was very painful going through that process, and I want to save as many of you as possible from that. So the question you have to ask yourself is, are you going to go big or go home, hardcore startup, or are you going to play it safe? Do something that's within your own ability to fund, very slowly grow it organically, which is fine. These are both good options. I'm not advocating one or the other. I just want you to know what you're getting yourself into. So many of the things that I'm going to talk about in this presentation, or that I've already talked about, apply to both, but a lot of them are just specific to hardcore startup type startups. Okay, so specifically the hardcore startups. Software is still king. Like I was saying before, what Tile and Particle did so successfully was they took a hardware product that enabled their software platform. The advantage there is it's a Trojan horse, right? Once you or I buy a Tile or a Particle, now we're in the Tile and Particle ecosystems, so we're likely to buy another Tile or Particle when we need another one of that type of product. That's how you get people in, that's how you get your hooks in, and then you do that in education, you're set. And then another thing that's really important is recurring revenue, not one-off revenue. So the mistake that I see a lot of lifestyle hardware businesses make is that they sell, some little dev board or something like that, and that's it. They sell the dev board. So you spend $20 on the dev board. You have to think that in order to grow that business, you have to spend a certain amount of money on, say, marketing. Then your thing called a CAC, customer acquisition cost, how much you spend to get one customer to buy your product. Each time you spend that amount of money to acquire a customer, they've now bought your one dev board. Done. That you never get that customer back again unless they need another dev board, and that's not very likely. So you have to spend that money again to get another customer, which is why you see all of these companies going to subscription, especially software companies going to subscription models, because then they get recurring revenue. They know that for however many customers they have right now, next month, they will probably have the same number of customers if they don't massively fuck up. So they'll get the same number of revenue dollars in the door. All they have to do is now just continue to grow that. And investors, they just love that. So speaking of investors, funding, when you go through, especially if you haven't done a startup before, when you go through a startup, funding is one of the most challenging things you'll face. And it usually goes through friends and family, and then angels, and then VCs. I said because if you're listening to me, good luck getting there. And then Kickstarter. Now, Kickstarter, I have a lot to talk about, and I don't know, maybe if Chris ever wants me back, I might do another talk on that. So we did Kickstarter with Cartesian Co. We raised $140K, which seems really small by Kickstarter numbers now, but it was in 2012, I think, so it was a little bit bigger for the time. It's not all it's cracked up to be. Kickstarter, you really do have to think of it as debt. You are taking on debt from your customers, and then you have to deliver a product to them. I mean, obviously, you're not required to deliver a product to them, but if you don't, good luck continuing to run the company. So you really do have to look at that as a very, very risky loan that you are taking from hundreds or thousands of people. And then the number one skill that any founder has to learn beyond engineering, beyond any form of business acumen or sales skill, is the ability to hire. So on that topic, hiring. As a founder, hiring is the single most important job that you will do. For those of you that know the IT crowd. Your company is going to be made up of the people that run it, not the product that you're producing. There will be, if you are successful, if you are as successful as you want to be, and that we all hope that you will be, you will not be doing any of the hardware, you will not be doing any of the sales, you will not be doing any of the day-to-day operations very quickly. All people that you hired will be doing that. And whatever their little personality types are and whatever their little quirks are, that's going to change the shape of the company that you run. So it is by far the most important thing that you need to get good at. And it's really, really hard. And it's really counterintuitive to interview someone in a way that actually tells you anything about them. And as you can tell, I like to talk. So it's very difficult for me to remember that when I'm interviewing someone, they should be doing the talking, not me. Anyway, maybe you're smarter than me at that. So you need to find brilliant motivated people that will put up with shitty pay and your lousy management. Because you haven't managed anyone before, so you don't know what the hell you're doing. You're a tiny startup that's running on a shoestrings. You can't pay them anything, but you need the best possible people so that you can compete with the big players. So these people could all go and get jobs at Google and Apple. Why the hell are they going to work for you? Well, it really helps if you have a mission. And, like again, harping back to where I work now, Zipline, the big mission that Zipline is working on is like saving lives. That's very straightforward, and also doing cool hardware at the same time. That's great. So, but I have a warning about this. If you are good at selling humans, if you're good at telling people what they want to hear, and you sell your employees on a mission that doesn't end up being true, well, you're just going to lose them. And worse, if you don't lose them, they will stick around and be upset, which means that you have to learn how to fire them. So now this is the worst thing you will ever have to do, but you need to get damn comfortable with it really fast. If your hiring process results in you bringing on someone that's bad, which will happen because think of it as a yield, you're not going to get 100% yield on your hiring, you're going to have a couple of people that come on that aren't good, then you need to get rid of that person fast. No matter what the problem is, if they have a work ethic problem, if they just have an interpersonal fit issue or a cultural fit issue, then it doesn't matter. You need to remove this person from the organization as quickly as possible. You need to cut them out like a cancer. And I know that sounds really callous, but there's a good reason for this. That sort of whatever is wrong, if they're unhappy with the hours that they're working, or they're unhappy with your management, that spreads like wildfire to everyone else, and that can very quickly ruin your company. There's a quote, or a rule, and I couldn't find the name of it, so I can't remember what it is, and I'm going to butcher it as well. But it goes something along the lines of everybody works as hard as the least hardworking colleague. So whoever the worst person is, everyone adjusts their work output. Not 100%, but subconsciously they adjust their work output to that worst person. I think there's another management rule, which is that people get promoted to the point where they are no longer good at their job. Maybe you guys can tell me the name of that one. Yeah, but right, you get a promotion because you're good, and then you're good at that job, so you get another promotion. Eventually, you're going to stop being promoted, right? Why did you stop getting promoted? Well, because you're not good enough to get promoted again. Probably not very good at your job. So yeah, that one doesn't apply here. Get rid of the worst person. Get rid of the person that isn't fitting as quick as possible. It will suck. It will hurt so bad, but everyone will be better off. They will be better off too because they're languishing in this job. If you really care about them as a human being, go help them find another job. But they can't have a job at your company. All the more reason to formalize your hiring process and get really good at it, because this part sucks. Okay, so some boring technicalities. I'm not going to go over these in an enormous amount of detail because I have experience with some of them, but not an enormous amount of experience with all of them. So sourcing, when you're building a hardware product, you might think, I'm just going to buy all the parts off DigiKey. It's going to be great. Or I'm just going to buy them off AliExpress, which no, this is a full-time job. If not just because all of those reasons I just mentioned. If you only have one vendor for a part, then what happens when that part goes out of stock? What happens if you have hundreds of parts in your product? What happens if you don't negotiate the price? Then you're getting screwed. You're paying way too much for your parts, and that's going to jack up the cost of the product. If you have potentially hundreds of parts in your product, how are you tracking that the quality of each of those components is staying the same each time you order it from the manufacturer? Because if you're not tracking that and one of those goes slightly out of spec and then you go and produce 100 or 1,000 boards, then all of those 1,000 boards will be broken and will need some level of rework, and that is really, really not fun. So sourcing, they are magical people that do that because they spend their entire time looking at spreadsheets and seem to like it. So I don't know how they do that, but they save your company. So figure out that really quickly, and you're not going to be the one that does it because it's a waste of your time. Packaging. So it might seem like a really small issue or like not a big deal, but it's much harder than it sounds from experience. And I mean, there are people these days that are actually graduating from university right now with packaging engineering degrees. Isn't that crazy? Like, what does this come to? This is one of the many things, this is one of the many things, though, that you can outsource. You can have another design firm do this for you, and you totally should. Because the way you should think about everything in your company is, what are your core skills? What do you and your team excel at? Right, do that and don't do anything else. Outsource everything else, because everything else is a waste of your time. You're wasting time, which startups don't have enough of. You're wasting money, which startups definitely don't have enough of. So just give it to someone else. They're going to be able to do it faster. I often think about the companies that like, again, sorry about if I piss anyone off. I often think about the companies that like are doing their own production runs, and they like buy a pick and place machine and start like programming it themselves and start pick and placing their own boards. And I'm like, that's such a bad idea, because how are you going to run the pick and place machine cheaper than a company that just runs pick and place machines? Don't you think that they'd already have gotten that price with the competition that's around? Don't you think they already would have gotten that price down to rock bottom? Just use them. And then when somebody goes wrong, you've got someone to yell at that isn't you. So fulfillment, this is great. If you guys, I don't know, maybe everybody knows what fulfillment is, but I didn't know what fulfillment was. It depends on what your product is going to be, right? Are you selling a couple $1 million products, or are you selling thousands and thousands of $2 products? If you're selling thousands of $2 products, then you're not going to be the person that packages each one of those up every time you get an order online and then puts a little sticker on it with the person's address and then drops it off at the post office or waits for the UPS man to come. There are companies that do this for you, and they're called fulfillment companies. And you just give all of your products to them. They put them on the shelves, and when an order comes through, they box it up and send it off. And yeah, Amazon does this. You can like do fulfillment by Amazon. You don't even have to do fulfillment by Amazon and then sell through Amazon, but if you're doing that, you probably should. But Amazon's very expensive. There's lots of companies in China that do this, but then your mileage may vary. So the next thing is sales platform. You're going to need to generate sales somehow. You're probably going to want to do that through a website, right? Well, you don't need to like make your own website from scratch. There are lots of platforms that already exist for doing this. Shopify is a great one. WooCommerce is a great one. WordPress has a bunch of plugins that do this. Actually, I think WooCommerce is a plugin for WordPress. But just because there are something that I like to say is that the world has gotten very good at simplifying technical jobs for non-technical people. So for instance, the once technical job of making a website, now anyone that doesn't have any technical expertise can do that themselves. But the world has not gotten very good at the opposite. Hasn't gotten very good at taking non-technical jobs and making them easier for technical people. So don't underestimate the amount of work that goes into making a good website that you can actually sell your product through. I was going to put examples in here, but then I thought that was a bit like not nice. But like, how many times have you guys gone into a website and like looked at a product and you're like, wow, this is really Web 1.0, and there's like a GIF in the corner, like an old school GIF, and you're like, I don't know if I trust like how good these people are, if I'm ever actually going to get this product that I pay for. So it really does take a lot of time. Like you have to do photography, you have to do theme, you have to pick color palettes, you have to start doing branding. It's like all of a sudden, once you start doing your website, you realize, oh shit, I have to have a proper business behind this. So yeah, don't underestimate the amount of work. One of the nice things though is that a lot of these sales platforms that exist will automatically have plugins to your fulfillment provider. So when an order comes in, it will just automatically go into your fulfillment provider's system and they'll just send it out. So as far as you're concerned, it's just magic, and somebody gives you money and then the product shows up on their end. And then speaking of magic, partnerships, resellers, distributors. So I don't personally have an enormous amount of experience with this, but it's a thing. So look it up. No. If you're sexy enough, if your product is really cool, everybody wants to get in. Everyone will contact you and they want a piece. But that's hard to do. So you actually have to like hit the pavement and like really make a lot of contacts in order to get partnerships and resellers and distributors, and then that's like much smaller than retail, which is like, don't even think about retail because you have to have like a really established product before you can even begin to do that. You've got to actually think about marketing. Like Are you the person that's going to create all of the? I mean, people have to find out about your product, right? Are you the person that's going to do all of the ad copy? Are you going to take all of the photos of your little doohickey blinking its lights and showing about how happy people are when it blinks its lights, and then like turn that into a Facebook ad campaign and track your cost per clicks, and then figure out if you actually want to do like Twitter ad campaigns as well? Yeah. So you've got to actually have someone on your team that's going to do this, and if it's not going to be you, you've got to find someone really good to do it fast. Okay, nobody ever thinks about this. Reverse supply chain and customer support. This is the worst. So what happens when your fulfillment company and your sales platform are working so well and the marketing is going great, so people are going here and this is getting shipped and you're like, this is amazing, and then all of the stuff arrives and it's broken and your customers are angry and they're tweeting at your Twitter page with angry photos of the thing not working and they're calling you out by name. Not that I have any experience with that. So you need to figure out your reverse supply chain. You need to figure out how you're going to get the products back to you, if that's what you want to do, to figure out what the failure mode is, to rework them so that they can be refurbished and resold, or, I don't know, recycled or whatever. And then you're also going to need to figure out your customer support. Again, are you selling this thing internationally? If so, are you going to have... Oh, I think the battery probably ran. Oh, no, there we go, just logged out. Are you selling this thing internationally? Okay, well, what happens when customers in Australia or Europe are having problems with their thingy and, it's not daytime in America? How are you going to deal with that? Are you just going to force them into daytime online chat hours, or is it going to be like a really disjointed email chain that takes like 10 friggin' emails over the course of a month and everyone's getting really annoyed? Like, is your plan to just wait for people to stop being and stop caring so they just stop emailing you? Because that's definitely a lot of people's plan. So you need to figure out how you're going to deal with customer support, and that, like, again, it just makes you have to formalize things so much. It makes you have to... You can't be doing cowboy engineering anymore. You actually have to go and make manuals and documents and scripts for your customer support officers to go through, and that stuff is so boring. And there's so many more things. So again, I didn't explain these very much, but like when you're looking for, you have a part, and you don't know what the name is, and you want to get another one, like 50% of the battle is figuring out the search terms. Well, there you go, 50% of the battle. So I do, however, have... no, never mind. So the takeaway from what I wanted you guys to have from this is not to be depressed. So I came up through the maker hacker culture, and I approached my company as like, it was a 3D printing company. So I was looking to the likes of MakerBot and Ultimaker, and I'm like, oh, those guys are so cool, and they make it seem so easy. Like, I can totally do that, which is one of the reasons we moved to New York, to be close to the MakerBot crew. When I started figuring all this stuff out, at first I was pretty overwhelmed and depressed, because I'm like, okay, well, I spent so long getting good at engineering, now I have this other thing that I don't actually like, and I have to get good at it as well. Well, I realized that's the wrong thinking. It's actually really fun. There are a whole bunch of... it's an interesting challenge, just like the hardware is an interesting challenge itself. And it doesn't seem like it at first, because business isn't usually taught in this guise, because it's not taught to technical people. But there are numbers and rules and strategies, just like in engineering. You just have to figure out what those are. You have to look at other companies in similar spaces to you and figure out, why are they successful? What tricks have they used to get people to buy their product, and what have they done to make people love their product and talk about their product and actually use it? Like, why does someone who buys a particle board... I know why people buy a particle board. I know why we buy particle boards, because we like dev boards, because we keep a big list of them. I was looking at your photo and I'm like, yeah, I remember that. It looks like what I got at home, right? There's a certain amount of collector in every tech person that just likes having those things. But what makes you... it's pretty useless if you sell a hardware product and the person never uses it, right? Because you're not getting any recurring value out of that sale. Even if you don't have a software platform to make, I don't know, more money out of somehow, which I know sounds evil, but that's business. Even if you don't have a software platform, if that person isn't actually turning your device on, then they're not thinking about it. They're not making cool products about it and posting them to Hackaday, and other people are seeing them and buying your product from that. Like, there's just it's not a closed loop. It's not working on itself. So think about it. What does Particle do to make you actually want to take the thing off your shelf that you bought a year ago and play with it? How do they do that? Is it some sort of email campaign that they send you? Is it clever marketing, clever ads online that you're not even noticing you're seeing? Just like figure out what the tricks are and you can use them yourself. So if I have destroyed any of your hope and you're thinking about just working on hardware, well, get in touch with me because we're looking for more engineers at Zipline. So now I couldn't do a great job of teaching you all the ins and outs because I don't have enough experience, but here are some people that can. So my definite recommended reading for anyone in the startup space that's interested in having a company is The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz. You may know Ben Horowitz is the Z from A16Z, the Z from A16Z. I describe this as an edge-of-your-seat CEO thriller. It's very exciting. It might as well be a novel. It's really good. Read that one first. Then there's the E-Myth Revisited. I never hear people talk about this. So the way that I would describe this book is make your company into being as successful as McDonald's by figuring out how McDonald's made their product so successful. And then this is not a book. Sam Altman from Y Combinator, he has a great lecture series on how to start a startup. And that's just, again, that should just be required reading for anyone who's interested in a startup. Some extended reading. These two are just for when you need them. There's Pitch Anything, which the name kind of says exactly what it does. There's Venture Deals, which helps you learn how to raise investment. It's like the technicalities of learning how to raise investment, so you don't go into a VC's office, as I may have done, and not understand what a convertible note is or a cap table. Okay, it was never that bad, but yeah, you should know the ins and outs so you don't look like a complete idiot. And then the absolute required for everyone, I know that probably most of us read this in high school or whatever, but How to Win Friends and Influence People, it's the closest thing to an API for humans that I've ever found. It's really good. Like that really helps you, even if you aren't starting a company, everybody should read that. I think there's an updated version that's How to Win Friends and Influence People in the Digital Age. So I think I read that one, the first one, and I think the new one references emails instead of letters. So read that. Get all of these. And if you don't read books, get friggin' Audible and listen to them while you're driving into work. That is all. Thank you very much. Any questions that I can horribly fail at answering? Oh, yes, here.
What do you think about what happened with Pebble?
Jeez. I mean, it's so complicated.
They raised money.
Yeah.
Signed, they killed their last two Kickstarters.
Yeah.
That's it.
I mean, this is kind of the example of the danger of Kickstarter, right? You take on, didn't Pebble, I'm trying to remember, I followed Pebble's early story much closer than I have their more recent story, but I believe in the early times they're having a really hard time in the first Kickstarter, they're having an incredibly hard time delivering on the product in the quantities that they sold. What was it, like a $1 million plus or $10 million plus Kickstarter, the first one? And that's one of those lessons, right? You're taking on an enormous amount of risk when you do that because you have to deliver. If you're going to deliver any units, you have to deliver all of the units. So a lot of the times what I've seen startups do is they go and raise money on Kickstarter and then they're like, cool, that's validation. I'm going to go take this to VCs and show them how hot we are and how much people want us, and they're going to invest money. VCs are like, hell no, I'm not funding you shipping to all of these people. You've raised $750,000 on Kickstarter, but it's going to cost you $1.5 million to actually produce those units because you didn't know what the hell you were doing. Well, I'm not, throwing $750K down the drain of my $1 million investment or whatever. So
it sounds too much like software startups.
What's his name?
It sounds too much like software startups.
Yeah. Well, that's the problem is everything is under the guise of software startups. Software startups formed Silicon Valley, and then we have to play by their rules. So, yeah. Sorry if I didn't answer the question enough. I just haven't been following the more recent history enough to actually get into what I think the cause of their problems was. Yeah.
So our little crew, we ran a hardcore startup and dug it into the ground, and now
congratulations.
Thank you. And feeling a little bit burned by that and wanting to run more of a lifestyle startup.
Yeah, I know how you feel.
And I guess what do you think about like trying to recruit those good people who are going to work really hard, but there's not some giant unicorn rainbow at the end of the tunnel. It's like, and you can make mid-hundreds and live out your career and buy a house one day.
I'd say good luck. I'm sorry. Because what you will find, in my experience, having found a couple of these people myself, is you will find people that will believe in, you'll find young people that are inexperienced but are brilliant and very motivated, that will believe in what you're doing and love the idea of getting in, like they're in the hacker maker space as well and will love it. And they'll work with you for a couple of years until they figure out that they can do one of these other things, and then they'll question why they were there in the first place. So if you think you can get the value out of them in those couple of years before they cotton on to the problem, then go for it. But assuming that you cannot, then I don't know.
I mean, I don't think there's anything like, that stinky about running the company where you just have a salary and do your own thing.
No,
but
there's plenty of people that want to do that.
There's not going to be any IPO.
Yeah.
Super payoff.
I mean, yeah, like I think you would have to find someone that understands this, that has the wisdom to see the world the way that it is and has decided to go and have just that job where they have to work. Like, I mean, they could have a normal job where they get paid 120, 130K and they work 8 hours a day, or they could work for you where they get paid 70K and they work 12 hours a day and weekends, and like they have to decide that or whatever, there's nothing wrong. They have to decide that that's what they want, and they have to know this. So yeah, good luck. Yes?
So Tile and Particle are both doing interesting things.
Yeah.
Do you have any metrics that show that they're actually sustainably profitable yet?
Yeah, no, I didn't go enough into the. That's what I was talking about. I didn't go enough into the numbers. I did only use their raise numbers, and they were recent raises. So I mean, that's not in and of itself an example of a successful company, because there are plenty of companies that raised money and then failed. But because the raises were so recent, I would say that probably things are looking good. And they're such large numbers, and from A-list investors, they probably did their homework. I'm just relying on them to know what they're doing. Sorry. Anyone? Yeah, Jason.
Could you talk a little bit more about how to price your product?
Oh, geez, I have no idea. We did a bad job of pricing our product. So don't do what we did, which was like, we were the first PCB printer on the marketplace. And so what we did was we looked to 3D printers and we were like, okay, that's close enough. Let's look at their pricing and their history of pricing. How much did the MakerBots first cost when they came out? How much do 3D printers cost now? So we'll just, that's good. And then we kind of experimented with that number a little bit as we went along by doing sale. We can't make the number go up. You're going to make the number go down, so watch out for that. Unless you bring out a new version of the product, even then it's kind of a hard sell. So we would bring the price down with various sales, and then we found that didn't seem to affect the people's purchasing habits very much at all. All it did was make the people who had already ordered but hadn't yet received printers very upset that they had already ordered and not received a printer but paid twice as much. So we issued a lot of refunds. But yeah, just don't do that. Yeah. Sorry, Jason.
Do you think that first printer you sell, you should be making margin on it, or should your pricing be, well, we should be making the margin we want on the, once we're shipping 500 units a month?
So here we go. Are you going to be a lifestyle business, or are you going to be a hardcore startup? If you're going to be a hardcore startup, you can justify not making margin on units that you sell nigh on forever if you have other revenue sources as well, but at least until like a lot of large companies aren't cash flow positive until like years in, and they've raised tens of millions of dollars in VC money. And that's the point of VC money, right? You're supposed to be operating cash flow negative. You're supposed to be operating at a loss. Because if you're operating at a profit, well, you're not reinvesting enough money to make the company grow fast enough, and it's a profitable idea, well, then you've just struck gold. So if you don't move quickly, other people are going to compete with you and start taking up part of the market share. So it gets real complicated real fast. A lot of the books talk about that, so much better than I do. Yes, get you.
Do you think that there's been a 2 to 2.5 times bomb number?
Yeah,
quite a bit?
that's actually. I think that's what we did with
ballpark still.
I think that's what we did with our printer as well. I mean, if you're doing if you want to kind of play it safe and like start selling your product as a lifestyle business to see if it catches on, and then you can like try and turn it into a hardcore startup. And I have seen people do that successfully, but there are traps there as well. Then yeah, 2.5 times BOM cost, like you'll be able to afford rent. So yeah. Yeah. Hey.
So since you know a lot about these PCB printers,
yes.
Is there anyone out there that's doing
yes.
a good job?
Yes. So a couple of our competitors didn't fail. So that was pretty good. So the two big ones that are left these days are Bot Factory. They make a product called the Squink. So sometimes people know the name Bot Factory, sometimes people know the name Squink. And those guys, they actually just recently raised money, so that was really good for them. And they make a product that both does PCB printing, it lays down conductive ink, but it also does pick and place, which I always thought was like way too much of an engineering problem to actually chew off both of those ends of the spectrum. But I think it works okay. I don't know, I would do your research a little bit more. I hadn't actually used one of the machines myself. One of the machines that I know actually does its job quite well is Volterra. Yeah. So Volterra has a lot more like mind share. They did a good job with that. They use a conductive paste rather than a liquid inkjet process. We also use liquid inkjet process. And they put down their paste onto FR4, and then it actually like has a hot plate on the machine, so it cures it on the machine. And then I believe that you can successfully reflow. I think you have to like burnish, you have to like scratch up a little bit to get it to be shiny so that the solder will reflow onto it. But you can reflow on their machine because it's a hot plate. But then you can also just use normal boards and reflow on their machines. It's a reflow hot plate as well, which is kind of cool. But it doesn't do pick and place. And then kind of the third player that's outside of this space a little bit is Voxel 8, with an 8 at the end. And they're doing conductive printing plus 3D printing in one go. So they have two heads. It does PLA extrusion, FDM 3D printing, and conductive paste extrusion. Best of luck to them. That sounds great. I don't know how that's like going to actually play out, because that's such a new technology. Like no one's designing boards. Like it's not even boards anymore, right? It's some sort of weird 3D structure. No one's designing anything like that. So they have to convince people to design stuff and use their machine. But I think they are now actually shipping them. So you can look into how well they work. So yeah, but I would say Bot Factory or Volterra. Any other questions? Yes.
Just going down that same vein with your own business, did you come across anything trying to tackle solder mask and silk screen in custom fabrication? Or did you specifically?
For our printer.
Yeah, with that type of process.
Right. Yes.
I think what's kind of buried in the fine print is that it's a bitch to solder with things that don't have.
Yeah. Right. So as a little bit of background to Cartesian code, the way that our printer worked was it used inkjet technology. It had two inkjet cartridges with both non-conductive inks in them. One of them was silver nitrate, and the other one was ascorbic acid, aka vitamin C. And they would jet down onto the board, and they were both in water, and they would mix in their aqueous solution and react to form solid silver. And then you would have silver left on the board with a bit of water left over with some byproduct nitric acid, and you just pat that dry and then wash it off, and you'd be left with a silver conductive pattern. That was it. That was all we had. That was the version 1 printer. We shipped nearly 200 of those, which was really, really great. We were working on the version 2 printer, which could do like multi-layer printing and like silkscreen and solder mask and all that. You know, Australians pronounce the L in solder. You do. So everyone who isn't North American. But we couldn't do that right now. So I don't believe that Volterra has any of that. They also just do the conductive patterns. But Bot Factory, I know they did release a multi-layer ink. So an insulative ink that they could print down as well and then print a conductive layer. That's what we were working on when the company went under. And I don't know how well it works because I haven't used it myself, and that's actually quite new, relatively. So I would probably like look online for people using it. You can do, I don't know how well they're supported in all of those different platforms. We supported silkscreen, but our silkscreen was a black ink cartridge. So yeah, take that for what it's worth. Okay. Anything else? No? Ooh, okay. Well, thank you very much, guys.